All right. One of the things that I ran into pretty early on when I was podcasting was editing, right? Editing takes a while if you actually listen through the whole podcast and remove all of the mistakes and problems and things like that. One thing that I found though was that most people didn't mind so much the ums, ahs, you knows, likes, things like that, as long as it wasn't through the whole episode. So if you were actually talking through an episode and it's that'll drive people nuts. But if you're a little bit conscious of that, then you can actually mitigate a bunch of it just by paying attention to what you're saying and not being too worried if you have to take a longer pause, because you can actually edit those out. Now, if you're doing an hour-long episode, my experience is if you listen through and actually clean it up, it's going to take you 2 or 3 hours to do the episode, to edit it. And when I was a new podcaster, one of the things I ran into was that I was podcasting after work. So I wanted to spend time with my wife. I wanted to spend time with my kids because they were little. Not so little anymore because I've been doing this for a long time. But one of the things that I figured out pretty fast was that I could actually shortcut that time. And what I've done, and we still do this at devchat.tv, we still do this. So what we do is if it's just me, then usually I'll just get a sticky note and I will just write down, because when you're recording this, especially on YouTube, it's up in the corner. I can see it. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. So it says live 1 minute 43 seconds. So we're 1 minute 43 seconds in, right? So I would just write down that timestamp, right? And then I'd write a little note: pause, cough, long pause, needed to start a sentence over, whatever, right? And by keeping track of that, then when I go back at the end of the episode and I go in and I start editing it, what I do is I just go to those points and just clean them up. And that allowed me to actually pick up a lot of the things that I needed to fix, or at least the big things, without spending 2 hours to edit a 1 hour long episode. So you do that. And then the other thing that you usually wind up doing is putting in some kind of intro. Sometimes you pre-record them, sometimes you record them afterward. All of our shows, we just record them in line. But if you're not doing that, then you can just stop and record it at the end, and then you just move it up. And then you put your intro music in, you put your exit music in, or outro music in. I've heard both terms. And then you're done, right? So you make it fade out when you're coming into the episode, and you make it fade back in at the end of the episode. And that'll take you 5, maybe 10 minutes, and you're done. So if you're looking for a way to shortcut the process, then you just keep track of that in line. Now, a lot of our episodes, we actually record them in Zoom, zoom.us. It's a tool that you can use to communicate with others. A lot of people know them now because their kids wound up using it for school during the COVID-19 pandemic when people were stuck at home. Anyway, what it does is we have it recorded to the cloud. And the reason is because then we don't have to have somebody around to actually record the thing. The cloud recordings, I'll do another episode on audio quality, but they're good enough. And it saves us a lot of time and effort. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that when it records, it also records the chat, and it timestamps the chat. You don't see the timestamps on there, but it does. So when you go download the chat from the Zoom call, it has timestamps in it. And so we have keywords. So it'll say edit, or sometimes there are actually notes, right? It's edit, blah, 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 right? Take out this section. And that makes it really easy for the editors to go in and clean that up. And so a lot of times what they'll wind up doing is they'll do what I just said. So they'll actually go in and do the edit, right? They'll actually just, cut those pieces out. A lot of times then after they've cleaned all that stuff up, they'll just give it a real quick run through at double speed or something and make sure that it all sounds okay. And then they're done. And so that saves them a ton of time too. So all in all, my advice is if you're new, now you probably aren't going to start out doing hour-long episodes. You can. I recommend people go for about 15 to 20 minutes when they're starting out. That's what I did. And it seemed to be about right. But then you can actually just take those notes, you can put it in, and then you can listen to it on the drive in the car. One other thing to keep in mind, though, is that most of the downloads happen the day you release, because that's when all the people who are subscribed to your feed get it. But if you do find a problem in there as you're listening, in the car on the way to work, and you realize that you need to change it, most systems, you just upload a file with the same name and it'll replace it inline. And so anybody who gets the version after that will actually just get the fixes in there, and that all works out pretty nicely. So there you go. That's basically my rundown on how to edit any episode in under 5 minutes, regardless of how long it is.